Welcome back to Footy Classified. Players and coaches alike are trying to make sense of today's development on the coronavirus and the AFL announcement on a 17-round season. Collingwood coach Nathan Buckley, no doubt among them, and he joins us tonight. Nathan, welcome to Footy Classified. It's great to have you along. How do you feel about today's developments?
I suppose we've got a little more clarity, Hutchie, in a very difficult situation, but I think the decision makers at AFL House have got far more information than myself or anyone at Clubland has, and we're awaiting some direction. We got some today, but there's no doubt that it's a pretty ever-changing landscape at the moment, as we understand.
And tomorrow could be another day again. You, of course, have got your one of your most influential figures, Scott Pendlebury, in quarantine, and we hear an announcement tomorrow or the next day on his results. Can you take us inside how nervous that is, the wait, and how he's feeling and going about it with his health?
Yeah, I think Pendles is one of 3 or 4 of our guys that have had sort of cold symptoms and have had that checked up, and I'd reckon that would be a fairly consistent situation or scenario across the 18 clubs, let alone the rest of society in Australia. Obviously, we're a little bit more, I suppose, with doctors there every day, and we're a little more aware of it because we understand that we want to keep this at bay as much as possible, and society's asking for that. But Pendles himself, basically had a bit of a runny nose and was diligent in presenting that to the doc, and there was enough there to warrant actually getting the test. Obviously that's another unknown, but it's not it won't be a scenario that we won't see pretty often over the next months.
Without jumping the gun, if it is a positive test, Bucks, what will the process be like from there?
I don't know exactly what the decision will be from the AFL as such. Clearly, there's protocols in place for any person who tests positive in our society, and that is to self-isolate for 2 weeks. And that would be the case for Scott. What that means for the people around him in the environment, I'm not as aware of. And what that means for the competition going forward, or our capacity to compete, is yet to be seen. But as I said, whilst the focus is on one player at the moment, I've got little doubt that there are other people in the football programs that are in the same situation, and that is a reality of what we're facing at the moment.
So it's not all about money, but the players today have entertained taking a pay cut. Obviously, AFL executives are going to take a pay cut. Have coaches been asked? Have you been asked already about taking a pay cut, and all your coaches?
It's something that we've discussed at Coaches Association level, or at least in a conversation with Mark Brayshaw. I think the industry is going through, like the rest of Australia and the rest of the world, an economic crisis of some sort, and this game has been enormous for a lot of people, not just the people within the industry, but the people that follow it. It's been a significant part of the way that we go about our lives, but there are the people that make their livelihood from the game that have been fortunate enough to be involved in it for a long time. I believe that when the game needs us back after what it's given us, that we should find a fairly consistent, skim whatever percentage off the top that's going to help fill the hole that will have been created, and I think that's administrators, players, coaches and staff alike.
Yeah, brilliant attitude, Bucks, from you there in that situation. I just want to ask you about managing your list from here. You may have to play another game if you can get through round 1 5 days later, multiple games. Have you sat down as a list management group on how you actually manage the situation with that?
Lordy, it's really tough before you know exactly what the situation is, and it's very fluid. I think one thing we do like to know as competitors is to have some surety on what the competition looks like, and We at this stage know that we're playing Friday night against the Bulldogs at Marvel. We understand what that circumstance looks like. We've got no idea what that is beyond that. So we don't get back to training as a group until Wednesday morning, at which stage we'll have more clarity on round one and where that sits. And yeah, mate, beyond that, list management, etc., how we would handle our squad, what we would do if we had time off. We've gone through those permutations, I suppose, but not in great detail because you can only plan for so many eventualities, and there seems to be quite a few.
You talk a lot about leadership. We saw it very emotionally on that documentary. And obviously you are a leader. You've been a leader as a player and a coach. You put out a fascinating tweet during the bushfire crisis about leadership and how people should behave and stand up. How would you compare the political leadership then to what you're seeing with your beloved AFL at the moment?
I'll probably speak more specifically about Gil and Steve Hocking and Brad Scott and the way that they've communicated over the last couple of weeks in a really testing time. I think that open communication is a really good start. Transparency, as much as you possibly can, is a really good start in leadership, especially in times of high anxiety and when people don't really know where they sit and where they stand. So I think that Gil and Stephen in particular have been, first class in that regard. They, more than anyone else, know the economic realities of what the AFL is facing and are trying to balance that up with the needs of our major stakeholder, which are our supporters and members, and trying to produce a product that they can be a part of, whether it's through the TV screens or hopefully later the capacity to be able to come back in droves and watch the game. So we want to see society be as normal as possible, and if AFL football can provide that, I'd like to think we can. But as I said, I think the leadership from the AFL has been pretty strong.
You've arguably been the most driven player and coach that we've ever seen in the history of the game. A premiership has eluded you, Bucks. Does it still mean as much to you in 2020 as it always has, or does it seem somewhat trivial?
It's definitely not trivial, Kane. I think that is what drives you on a performance level, and win-loss is part of the gig. You can't escape that, but there are other elements of what we're responsible for and what we do as a group of people, as a community internally in the football club, and clearly what you mean to a far larger group of people externally that have become, I was going to say just as important, but equally as important and definitely have been at the forefront of my mind more recently. In the last 5 or 6 years increasingly, but 2020 is all I can worry about and all we can worry about. Whatever's gone in the past is well and truly in the past, and we intend to be the best of ourselves to contend for a cup that will be handed over at the end of this year in some shape or form, and we want to be the team that receives that.
Nathan, we appreciate your time. Thanks for your leadership and good luck this weekend and beyond.
Thanks, guys.